My guests are three people who understand campaigns very well. Tim Murphy is a former chief of staff to former Prime Minister Paul Martin and played key strategy roles in two national campaigns. Jamie Ellerton was the media relations manager for former Conservative leader Andrew Scheer's tour during the 2019 campaign. Kathleen Monk was the campaign spokesperson and media director for NDP leader Jack Layton's 2011 campaign. Thank you very much, War Room. Tim, we will start with you. The Liberals have tried to make the case that Parliament is not functioning despite pleas of cooperation from other leaders, particularly Jagmeet Singh. Is this decision to go now based on favourable polling for Trudeau and his team?
So I kind of agree with how Chris laid it out. I think those are all factors. I think there are just times in the life of a parliament, especially a minority one, where consultation with the electorate makes sense. And I think we're at that stage in the process of dealing with the pandemic, laying out a significant sum of money, investing in a variety of things from childcare and other, whereas we think about what kind of society, what kind of economy we're going to have going forward, that it kind of makes sense to go out and consult with the public, to ask them what their views are, and to make a choice among what's on offer from the various different leaders. And I think in that context, as Chris said, this is 2 years after the last election, which is almost dead on the average for when an election occurs in a minority parliament context.
Jamie, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about the timing and the reason behind why the Prime Minister, we will soon be calling him the Liberal leader once we are into the election campaign, but Jamie, what are your thoughts on the reasons why and why this is happening now?
So I think the timing is the Trudeau government is effectively tired of having to deal with kind of parliamentary committees litigating every issue, large and small, as a result of a minority parliament. They're looking at the poll numbers. They kind of sense where Canadians are at, and they think they've got a shot to get their majority back. It's all Liberal Party politics driving this, and I think that's why you're going to see both opposition parties talk about why you shouldn't be having an election at this time in the middle of a pandemic. There's still lots of work to do. You're getting your budget and other stuff through Parliament, so why do we have to take the risk of going to the polls? I think you're going to see that in the early days, but ultimately I think from there the opposition parties will switch into kind of answering three questions: who they are, what they want to do for individual Canadians, and where they want to take the country, and hope that they can themselves earn a mandate.
Kathleen, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you make of the timing of all of this and the reasons why?
Well, listen, I think it's been argued by Jagmeet Singh and others that this election shouldn't take place. But it doesn't come as a surprise to me that it's going to be called this weekend, and probably not to you either, Katie. I think actually anyone in politics, it's very rare that an election call comes as a surprise. We virtually always know in advance. I can give you an example. I always knew in advance the 2008 election, the 2011 election. Why? Because I had to move my parents in about a week to 10 days earlier before the election so they could take care of my children. That's what happens. We always know. We have a telegraph of when the election is going to drop. And as Jamie said, it's largely because the Liberals want to take advantage of their good poll numbers right now.
Jamie, I'm going to start with you for this round of questioning. Take us inside what would be typically happening in a war room right now. What are the parties doing behind the scenes? What are the Conservatives doing behind the scenes right now to prep for Sunday?
Yeah, so at this stage of the game, Katie, the platform and the strategy is set. It is all about execution. They're getting the national campaign playing buses and teams ready. They're going to have tour teams that would be planning the leader schedule and some secondary tour of higher profile people who have prominence in the party to regions where they want to be to support the leaders tour. And it's all about logistics and execution. And then on the air war side of stuff, they'd be ready and to get their advertising ready for the networks. Digital, of course, will play a big factor in that, and kind of constantly monitoring how assumptions they've made to build the strategy using public opinion research are tested now as it's actually out in the field and rolled out, and looking to tweak in the early days to make sure that they think on the course for a successful election night.
Tim, tell us what's going on behind the scenes, or what should be going on behind the scenes in the Liberal war room right now.
Well, you'll be unsurprised to know that actually it's almost exactly the same from a structural point of view, as Jamie pointed out. I think the two things that you really pay attention to at this point is, one is you don't want a first day disaster, because that can frame you very badly out of the gate. So everyone's focused on making sure that, your launch picture is good, the things happen on time, the people are ready. And then the second thing you're kind of working through is, what your messages are. You kind of have a sense of what you want people to take away. But what you're going to worry about is the stuff that's coming at you, people kind of being aggressive in questioning and being ready for the stuff that's trying to throw you off. So you're spending time getting that. And then there's a third thing, obviously, which is a war room in particular, is getting all the research done on the other parties and figuring out when best to let the media know about it.
Kathleen, take us behind the scenes for the NDP. How much of a challenge can it be to ensure that the campaign stays on message and that they're not knocked off message by any sort of unexpected developments, which always happen in a campaign?
Yeah, for sure. And it's the war room's job, and particularly rapid response, research, media, to ensure that when something happens, that correction is issued quickly. So in terms of narrowly focusing on those three different areas of research, of media, and of course, candidate support, all those other things, what that group in the war room is focused on is really figuring out how to engage in the cut and thrust of the campaign every day in today's announcements, while still remaining focused on what matters to Canadians, right? Not losing sight of the big picture. If your war room is all about gimmicks, if your war room is all about brown envelopes or God forbid chicken suits, you're going to be losing, because you may get a few laughs with the journalists on the chicken suits, but you're not going to actually connect with voters. So the job of the war room, it can be really clear, and there's a couple of clear rules that they've got to follow, like speed kills. If something happens on the campaign, you've got to react quickly. Speed is what kills stories. So you've got to move quickly. You've got to always prepare in advance. And this is, much earlier than you think you should be. If you're just preparing your research now, you've lost it. They should have been preparing months and months and months ago. And no hit goes unanswered. So if another party attacks you, you have to hit back, and you have to answer that in an election call, because the election moves very quickly. It's 36 days, as you know. Every day costs several $1 million. So you want to really make sure you are making sure you don't lose a day on the campaign trail at all. And that's really the job of the war room. And so the NDP war room will be looking at how to show those examples of how Trudeau is kind of, he talks a good talk, but when it comes to delivering for Canadians, it's Jagmeet Singh who has, tried to push forward the COVID benefits and the things that Canadians need during the pandemic.
We have less than 2 minutes left, and I'd like to hear from all three of you as we go around one last time. This is going to be an election campaign unlike any other that we've seen in the era of COVID. Kathleen, I haven't started with you just yet, so I'm going to start with you right now. What concerns are there about, campaigns, given that social events are key to COVID here? COVID loves social events. COVID loves when people are together. And that is a big concern here, because so much of political campaigning is about getting people together, motivating them to get out and really making connections. So, Kathleen, how do campaigns prepare for this unprecedented challenge that the world is dealing with right now?
Certainly, the campaign tour is going to be different, and those people have spent months and weeks thinking about how to shape up that tour. I do not think we will see the thousands in crowds like we did, say, in Montreal in 2011 or Burnaby, those large, hundreds and hundreds of people packed into tight quarters. But they will still have a hybrid event. They will still have events like that. There will be people. They'll be spaced out. They'll be tracking. The people will, probably get their names and contact information, lots of sanitation. And also there'll be more hybrid events, more online and more Zoom.
Jamie, do you think there's any advantage does anyone here have an advantage if traditional campaigning can't be done? Is there any way that anyone can benefit, or are there hindrances to some of these campaigns if these traditional events can't go on?
Yeah, I don't think anyone has a really clear advantage. I think one of the things that maybe Conservatives have on this is because they've gone through a leadership race. They were kind of the first to pioneer Zoom campaigning, and a lot more people were more tuned in. But of course, everyone was locked down, and so you were kind of talking to a very narrow audience on this. I think you're going to see a lot of dynamic in terms of hybrid events. If you look at how kind of narrative develops and how media reports on these things, kind of crowd size at the leaders event at the start of the campaign and tracking that throughout was kind of a barometer for where Canadians were at and ultimately predicting where they would be on election day. And so without that there's going to be a lot of people of all sides making noise, not even just the parties, but other stakeholders and large associations that kind of are trying to sway issues to their attention. And so it's going to be actually probably harder for journalists to do their job and get a read on it and kind of go beyond the headline national polls. If we were going by national polls, of course, and what that meant on election day, Andrew Scheer would be prime minister today because he won the plurality of the vote last time. But how that translated into seat counts, it's going to make it actually, I think, a lot tougher for you and your colleagues, Katie.
Exactly. Tim, last word to you. We have less than a minute here. What do you take, or what are you looking for taking away? What are you expecting in this unusual campaign?
Yeah, so I think it's going to accelerate a trend we've been seeing for the last number of elections, which is increasing use of digital connection to voters on the various social media and other platforms, and that just puts an even greater premium on it in this campaign. I think all of the campaigns have been migrating significantly in that direction already. This will accelerate it even more. I think the one good thing about a summer campaign is it actually allows some events of the kind outdoors that where the risk is lower. And I think that you'll still have some of those events where you're really, sometimes people take the crowd size as a surrogate for something else, but really you're using it to generate enthusiasm for your own side and for the team and a sense of momentum. And I think there's still the possibility for those kinds of events outdoors. We won't see crowded, sweaty indoor venues very much in this campaign, but there's still the opportunity to show some momentum in large outdoor events. Frankly, we saw those kind of things in the U.S. campaign, and I think they're possible here.
All right, we're going to pause the conversation there. I want to thank all three of you for joining us today.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.